All right, don't mind the terrible lighting. We have a slightly different setup today, but here we are. We're going to do some size comparisons, and I'm going to throw up the specs after I do those. Here is the Civivi Imperium. Oh, I should probably open that, huh? Here is the Civivi Knives Imperium next to our small knife. They're at number 2. Here it is next to our large knife, the Off-Grid Knives Scorpion. Once again, you know how this goes. It's the middle one. It's bigger than a rat. It's smaller than the Off-Grid Knives Scorpion. Let's put it against some other knives that you may or may not be familiar with. Here's your Imperium. Here it is next to a Spyderco Shaman. Here it is next to a Spyderco Smock. Thank you, Tyler. Wow. Actually, hey, while we're here, that's interesting. Pretty close to the Smock, actually. Almost 1-for-1 on the Spock specs there. Spock specs. Smock specs. Oh my god. And then here it is next to a Protect Knives Malibu. And last, but never ever least, a Chris Reeve Knives Large Sabenza. All right, stick around for the rest of the review. Stick around for specs. Hey everybody, Corey here, coming at you with another knife review video. Today we are taking a look at the Civivi Knives Imperium. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I try to put out knife-related content on a regular basis. So, I'm going to do this differently today. I feel like everything I have to say about this knife is relatively concise, so I'm just going to give you my summary, and that's pretty much going to be the video. I'll probably do a tabletop for some size comparisons, but I'm not going to beat this thing to death. Civivi Imperium, what are you going to pay for this? You're going to pay about $60 to $80 depending on the blade material and the handle material that you get. They offer G10, I think they offer micarta, and they offer this beautiful, they refer to it as a flake and shredded carbon fiber. The flake is the gold. They have gold flakes, silver flakes, and copper flakes, depending on what you're into. So that's pretty cool, but I think this is just absolutely beautiful. The blade steel is Nitro V. You can't change that. But Nitro V is actually a really good blade steel, and let's talk about that, because that's one of the good things that I wanted to say about this knife. The materials that you're getting here. You've got this very unique gold flake shredded carbon fiber, and not all carbon fiber is created equal, and Civivi does theirs very well. I think this is a unique enough handle material on its own to where if that was the only thing that was cool about this knife, it would be enough for me or you to justify buying it. And then let's talk about Nitro V blade steel. So this is a relatively new blade steel in terms of its use in pocket knives, and if I'm being completely honest, based on everything I know about this blade steel, I think I can safely say for any budget knife, say under $100, I would be more than happy if Nitro V was the only blade steel I ever had. I'm not going to go too deep into the chemical composition, but essentially I have the Knife Steel Nerds analysis pulled up here, and Nitro V has been concluded to actually be tougher than M390, LMAX, and S35VN, which is essentially its resistance to chipping, cracking, all that good stuff. So that's pretty good for a knife that doesn't even run you $100 to be better than a lot of these like super steels or mid to high end steels. That's pretty cool for how much money you're paying for this knife. The other thing that I really like about this knife, it has what I refer to as a glassy action. And what's interesting is I realized this earlier. This actually has like no friction inside the pivot as I disengage it or as I engage it. So for example, if I was to hold this knife like this and close my eyes, and someone came along and closed this knife, I would never know that they were closing it until it snapped shut. I mean, there is like no friction inside this pivot. I mean, it is really nice. Now, it's not necessarily drop shut. You can see it doesn't just fall from gravity, but it's very smooth, and it essentially requires no effort to close. So that's what I'll say about the action. And then finally, the ergos are actually really good on this knife, in my opinion. It's a very usable knife. They did a good job designing it. And even though it's very long and slender, and it kind of looks like it might not be that comfortable, it just is. And I think the primary reason for that is the fact that the scales are actually contoured. It's kind of hard to show you. Maybe you can see it in the B-roll footage, but essentially, they're not just blocks. They're actually rounded on both sides. In knives that are contoured, I say this all the time because it's 2021. We need to contour our knives. It's comfortable. Our hands fit them better. This is a contoured knife. That's really what I'm trying to say. And then from a usability perspective, it does have a deep carry pocket clip. Let's focus. There we go. It's got a deep carry pocket clip, and they do a good job. It's got the recessed screws. There's about a little bit over a 1/4 inch of knife sticking out of your pocket when all is said and done. But if that's a problem for you, I don't know. It's just not that big of a deal. In my opinion, they did the deep carry pocket clip well. So on the good side of things, you're getting really cool, really good materials for less than $100. The ergos on this knife are good, and the action is absolutely awesome. It's also kind of fidget friendly because there's multiple deployment methods. You know, if front flipping isn't for you, you can always use the thumb studs. So that's nice. On the things that I think this knife could do better. So the front flipper, I want to talk about this because I feel like a lot of people who buy front flippers, they buy them because they really enjoy fidgeting with their knives. And as such, that's something that might be important to you. This is going to differ depending on the exact size of your hands. But in my opinion, front flippers seem to work better on shorter knives because the distance between the front flipper and the pocket clip are kind of what determine how it feels when you're front flipping it. For those of you who don't know, when you front flip a knife, you need to grab something, and it's usually easiest to grab underneath the pocket clip. It just so happens for me, at least, that when I am ready to front flip this knife, my fingers that I really want to grab onto the pocket clip with, they are right where it essentially dips down, and I just can't really grab anything, and I really have to think about it when I want to successfully front flip it. And I don't know, something that I've noticed lately is that something that makes me feel like I don't like a knife is how much I need to think about that knife while I use it. If it's hard to use, if it's hard to deploy, if it's hard to close, if it makes me use my brain just to handle the knife, I don't really like it. And I feel like front flipping this knife just requires a little bit too much brain power. I can't just whip it out of my pocket and front flip it. I need to really think about, like, okay, am I grabbing the clip in the right spot? Okay, now I can front flip it. I just don't like that. The other thing that I will say, I think as a result of this knife being as skinny as it is, what essentially happens when you grab it is, even though it's relatively comfortable, you kind of just devour it with your hand because the knife is so skinny in terms of the thickness here. You just eat it. Your hand completely devours it. And as such, I would say that this pocket clip is actually just a tad too tall. I don't know anybody whose pants are that thick. I think the pocket clip could be a little bit lower because the pocket clip is really the only hot spot. I know I said the ergos on this knife are good, and overall, I would still say that they are. But in my opinion, I think the pocket clip could be just like a millimeter or two lower, and it would make a really big difference in terms of ergonomics. Now, for my third thing that I want to complain about, I need to emphasize something. This was interesting because normally I do 3 things that the knife does well and three things that I think the knife could improve upon. I actually really had to sit and think about the third thing that I thought this knife could improve upon. It might not be for everybody in terms of the aesthetic or the action, but I'm not going to say, oh, I don't like that it's a front flipper, that's bad, because that's personal preference. So if you don't like front flippers, don't buy the knife. But essentially, what am I trying to say? The only other thing I could think of, maybe this will show up better on the tabletop. I can't quite get it perfectly centered. It does kind of favor the clip side just a little bit. That's the only other thing that I can really complain about with this knife. Other than the centering, the fit and finish is absolutely great. The action is great. The ergos are great. I think it's a good size. It's not too big. It's not too small. They did a really good job with this knife. They use some unique materials. They make you feel like you're getting a premium product in the budget price range. It's really nice, and I really had to kind of grasp at straws to find a third thing that I thought the knife could improve upon, because really, Civivi's doing good work, guys. They always have, and I think they always will. This knife is no exception. If you've been looking at this, I say go for it. I really like the options that they have. I think it's crazy that Civivi allows you to get gold flake carbon fiber with a Damascus blade for less than $100. Like, it's crazy what you can do with Civivis and Wiis and all that stuff. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you found it useful, and I will see you guys next time.